Opening hook. My sister raised her champagne glass, and I knew with the kind of certainty you feel in your bones that whatever came next would change everything. "Where's your husband and kids, Emma?" Maddie's voice was honey-sweet, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Oh, right, you don't have any." The laughter that followed wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. My mother's crystalline giggle, my father's low chuckle. The sound wrapped around my throat like a noose. I'd spent 7 years keeping their lights on their mortgage, paid their world spinning, and here I was the punchline at their table. But before I tell you how that dinner ended, let me tell you how it started. Because the worst betrayals don't happen all at once. They happen slowly, payment by payment, excuse by excuse, until you wake up one morning and realize you've been funding your own erasure. I'm Emma Richardson. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of how my family taught me that love isn't supposed to cost everything. The notification lit up my phone at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Chase Bank, $200 to $500 transferred to Patricia Richardson. Available balance, $1,847.23. I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold in my hand. Through my apartment window, Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood was waking up joggers on the sidewalk, the coffee shop across the street raising its metal shutters, early morning light turning the sound silver in the distance. My apartment was small but mine. Clean lines, cream-colored walls, a couch I'd saved 3 months for. Plants on the windowsill that I actually kept alive. Everything in its place. Everything controlled. Except my bank account. That number, $1,847.23, it was supposed to last me 2 weeks until my next paycheck. Rent was due Friday. I had a work lunch on Thursday I was supposed to split with colleagues. My car needed an oil change. And somewhere in the next 14 days, I'd need to eat. I should have been angry. Instead, I felt that familiar numbness settling over me like fog. This was just how things were. I opened my banking app and scrolled back through the months. The transfers painted a picture I didn't want to see, but couldn't look away from March 15th, 2500, Patricia Richardson Mortgage. March 8th, 800, Madison Richardson, Rent Assistance. February 28th, 450, Patricia Richardson Medication. February 15th, 2500, Patricia Richardson Mortgage. February 12th, 600, Madison Richardson, Car Payment. February 3rd, 1200, Robert Richardson Property Tax. On and on it went. A river of money flowing out. I scrolled further back. 6 months, a year, 2 years, 7 years. My hands were shaking when I finally did the math I'd been avoiding for so long. $84,247. I said it out loud to my empty apartment. $84,000. The number didn't sound real. It was a down payment on a house. It was 2 years of financial freedom. It was every vacation I'd never taken, every promotion celebration I'd skipped, every sorry I can't afford it I'd told my friends while my family bought new furniture and paid for my sister's essential photo shoots. With $84,000, I could have been someone else. Someone who said yes when her college roommate invited her to Cabo. Someone who didn't buy the generic brand of everything. Someone who didn't lie awake calculating whether she could afford both groceries and gas. But I wasn't that person. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who showed up. I was Emma Richardson, 32-year-old UX researcher, holder of a master's degree and an empty savings account. The daughter who'd spent her 20s building a safety net for everyone but herself. My phone buzzed. Another text from Mom. Mom, morning sweetheart transfer went through, thank you. You're a lifesaver. See you Sunday making your favorite roast chicken. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on sounds good. Because that's what good daughters did, right? They didn't complain. They didn't keep score. They showed up with a smile and a bottle of wine and pretended their bank account wasn't screaming. The drive to Tacoma took an hour on Sundays, longer if there was traffic on I-5. I'd made this drive so many times I could do it on autopilot past the Boeing plant through Federal Way exit 133 toward my childhood zip code. The house appeared exactly as it always did, a Victorian-style 2-story with peeling blue paint and a porch that listed slightly to the left. The lawn needed mowing. The gutters needed cleaning. The whole place had that worn-around-the-edges look of a family holding on by their fingernails. Except I was the one holding them up. I grabbed the wine from my passenger seat, a $12 Pinot Grigio, the most I could afford this week, and walked up the familiar cracked pathway. Before I could knock, the door swung open. My mother stood there, apron tied around her waist, her graying hair swept up in the same loose bun she'd worn my entire life. "Emma, come in, come in." She pulled me into a hug that smelled like flour and lavender hand lotion. "You look thin. Are you eating enough?" "I'm fine, Mom." "Well, good thing I made extra potatoes. Maddie's here too, she's in the living room. Your father's just finishing up a call with a potential client." I followed her inside, my eyes automatically scanning the walls I'd memorized. The same gallery of family photos marched down the hallway. Maddie at 18 in her pageant dress tiara catching the light. Dad shaking hands with the university dean at some long-ago event. Mom in her nursing scrubs back when her heart was strong and her future was secure. There was one photo of me. Just one. Half hidden behind the thermostat, a faded image from my college graduation. I was standing between my parents, my smile tight, my eyes already tired. Even then, I'd looked like I was carrying weight no one else could see. "Maddie," Mom called, "your sister's here." My younger sister appeared in the doorway to the living room, phone in hand, looking exactly like someone who'd just woken up at 2 p.m. At 28, Maddie had perfected the art of looking effortlessly beautiful, messy blonde waves, makeup-free skin that glowed, vintage band t-shirt artfully distressed. "Hey, sis?" She didn't look up from her screen. "Mom, do we have any of that good balsamic? I want to post the salad." "For eating or for Instagram?" I asked. Both, obviously. This was Maddie's life now. 3,000 Instagram followers. Occasional partnerships with brands that paid her in product, not money. A lifestyle blog that got decent traffic but zero income. She called herself a creative entrepreneur, which seemed to mean unemployed but with good lighting. And I was the one paying her rent. Dad emerged from his home office phone still pressed to his ear. Robert Richardson had the kind of face that photographs well-strong jaw, silver hair, professorial glasses. He'd taught economics at the State University for 20 years before moving into consulting, which mostly meant waiting for calls from former colleagues who never quite came through with actual work. He ended his call and clapped me on the shoulder. Not a hug. Never a hug. A pat like I was a colleague he vaguely respected. "Emma, good to see you. How's the tech world treating you?" "Fine. Busy." "Excellent, excellent. This economy, you know, having a stable job is invaluable. I keep telling Maddie she should consider something more traditional, but..." He trailed off with an indulgent smile toward my sister. Maddie didn't even look up from her phone. We settled around the dining room table, the same table we'd eaten at every Sunday for as long as I could remember. Mom brought out the roast chicken, golden and herb-crusted. Mashed potatoes. Green beans. Dinner rolls that steamed when you broke them open. It looked like love. It smelled like home. But somewhere between the passing of plates and the small talk about weather, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. The invisible hand reaching into my pocket. The unspoken expectation hovering over every bite. "So Emma," Dad said, cutting into his chicken with surgical precision, "I wanted to mention the mortgage payment is going up next month. Property taxes, you know. About 200 more. I know you're always so good about keeping things steady." Not a question, not a request, a statement of fact. Mom jumped in quickly. "And sweetheart, I hate to ask, but my prescription costs keep climbing. The insurance barely covers anything anymore. It's just so expensive getting old." She laughed, but her eyes were watchful. Maddie swirled her wine glass. "Oh, and Em, I meant to text you. I need about 500 for this portfolio shoot next week. It's with a really well-known photographer. Could be huge for my brand." 3 requests. 3 different people. Same expectation I'd say yes. I cut my chicken into smaller and smaller pieces, watching the knife slide through the meat. My throat felt tight. I'll see what I can do." The relief on their faces was immediate. Dad nodded approvingly. Mom reached over to pat my hand. Maddie smiled and finally looked up from her phone. "You're the best, sis. Seriously, I don't know what we'd do without you." And there it was. The sentence that made it all worthwhile, that made the sacrifice feel noble instead of stupid. They needed me. I was essential. I was the only thing standing between them and collapse. And wasn't that what family was supposed to be? But as I watched them eat, watched them relax now that the money issue was resolved, I saw something I'd been trying not to see for years. When they looked at me, they didn't see Emma. They didn't see the woman who worked 50-hour weeks, who'd turned down job opportunities in other cities to stay close, who'd postponed her own life again and again. They saw a solution, an ATM with a heartbeat. After dinner, I helped Mom with the dishes. We stood side by side at the sink, just like we had when I was young. But nothing about this felt nostalgic. It felt like a performance we'd both perfected. "You know we appreciate everything, don't you?" Mom said quietly, scrubbing at a roasting pan. "Your father and I were so proud of what you've built. And Maddie, well, she'll find her way. She just needs a little more time." I dried a plate carefully. "How much more time, Mom?" "What do you mean?" "She's 28. I was paying my own bills at 22. Mom's hands stilled in the soapy water. "Everyone's journey is different, Emma. You were always so independent, so capable. Maddie's more sensitive. She needs support." And I didn't. The question hung in the air between us. Mom's expression flickered confusion, maybe defensiveness, before settling back into her usual placid smile. "Of course you did, sweetheart, but you never seemed to need help the way Maddie does. You've always been so strong." Strong. That word again. The compliment that felt like a cage. I drove home in the dark, the highway lights strobing past my window. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. $84,000. 7 years. And for what? So my father could pretend he was still the provider while I footed the bills. So my mother could maintain the fiction that everything was fine. So my sister could play dress-up with her future while I funded the costume changes. When had I become this person, the one who said yes to everything, who swallowed her resentment, like bitter medicine, who confused self-sacrifice with self-worth? My phone sat in the cup holder, dark and silent. No thank you texts, no we appreciate you messages, because this was just Tuesday, just another week, just Emma doing what Emma does. I parked in front of my apartment and sat in the car engine ticking as it cooled. Through my windshield, I could see my building modest, but mine paid for with money that somehow never quite accumulated into anything beyond survival. I was 32 years old, and I had nothing to show for it except receipts and a family who'd learned that love for them was free. But not for me. Never for me. The next Sunday arrived with an unseasonable chill, the kind of April cold that makes you remember Seattle was built on rain and doubt. I almost didn't go. I sat in my apartment that morning, coffee growing cold in my hands, staring at the recurring calendar notification. Family dinner, 5 p.m., Tacoma. I could cancel. Text some excuse about work, about not feeling well, about literally anything other than the truth. But guilt is a muscle, and mine had been exercised for 7 years. It didn't matter that my bank account was whimpering. It didn't matter that I'd eaten ramen 3 nights in a row to make the budget work. Family dinner was tradition, and tradition was mandatory. When I pulled up to the house, something felt different. The porch light was actually working. The lawn had been mowed. And through the window I could see the dining room table set with the good dishes, the ones Mom usually saved for Thanksgiving. My stomach clenched with an anxiety I couldn't name. Mom answered the door in a dress. Not her usual comfortable sweater, but an actual dress with a pearl necklace I hadn't seen in years. Emma, perfect timing. She kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of her fancy perfume, the one she claimed was too expensive to waste on regular days. What's the occasion? No occasion, can't a mother make an effort? But her smile was too bright, her laugh too quick. I stepped inside and stopped. The house looked different, cleaner. The usual clutter of mail and magazines had vanished. Candles flickered on the mantel, and in the center of the dining room table sat a bottle of champagne condensation beading on the glass. Champagne. We never had champagne. Dad appeared from the kitchen wearing a button-down shirt I'd bought him 2 Christmases ago, the tags probably still in the drawer until today. "Emma, come in, come in. Maddie's just finishing up her makeup. You know how she is." I knew exactly how she was. But the question was, what was all this? I set my usual bottle of cheap wine on the counter, where it looked embarrassingly inadequate next to the champagne. My contribution is always insufficient. "Why don't you open that champagne, Bob?" Mom called from the kitchen. "Let's celebrate what I asked." But no one answered. Maddie descended the stairs like she was walking a runway. Hair curled in perfect waves. Makeup Instagram ready. A dress that definitely cost more than I'd sent her for rent last month. "Oh, good you're here." she said, not quite meeting my eyes. We can finally start. Finally. Like I'd been keeping them waiting. Like I wasn't exactly on time as always. We sat down and I watched my father pop the champagne with practiced ease. The cork flew, the foam bubbled over, and he poured 4 glasses with a flourish. To family, he said, raising his glass. To family, they echoed. I lifted my glass but didn't drink. Something was wrong. The air felt thick, charged with anticipation that made my skin prickle. Mom brought out dinner her usual roast chicken, but presented like something from a cooking show. Garnished with herbs. Arranged artfully. The mashed potatoes piped into perfect swirls. We ate in strange, formal silence. Usually Sunday dinners were full of talk. Mom's stories about the neighbor's drama, Dad's complaints about the state of education, Maddie's monologues about whatever influencer was problematic this week. But tonight they kept glancing at each other, exchanging looks I couldn't read. So Emma, Maddie said, finally setting down her fork with a clink that sounded too loud. Mom mentioned you ran into my college friend Amy at the grocery store last week. I had. Amy Preston, who'd been in Maddie's sorority. I'd exchanged exactly 30 seconds of pleasantries in the cereal aisle. Yeah, briefly. Did she mention she's pregnant with her second? Maddie's voice was casual, but her eyes were sharp. She might have. And her husband just made partner at his law firm. Isn't that amazing? They just bought a house in Maple Valley. 4 bedrooms. I took a sip of champagne I didn't want. Good for them. Emma went to school with Amy's husband, Mom added helpfully. Derek Yang. Remember him, sweetie? He was in your political science class. I remembered Derek Yang as someone who'd asked to copy my notes exactly twice and never spoke to me again. Vaguely. It's just so wonderful seeing our peers settle into their lives, you know, Maddie continued, and I felt the conversation tightening around me like a trap. Building families, creating homes, really establishing themselves. The criticism was subtle but unmistakable. While everyone else was adulting correctly, marriage children houses, I was apparently failing at the basic requirements of womanhood. Maddie just means, Mom said gently, that at a certain age priorities shift. Career is wonderful, but fulfillment comes from so many places. Dad nodded sagely. You've done so well professionally, Emma. Built a solid foundation. But a foundation is just the beginning. At some point you build the house. I set my fork down slowly. Is this an intervention about my life choices? Don't be dramatic, Maddie said, rolling her eyes. We're just talking. About how I'm 32 and single. Well, Mom's voice was soft pitying. We do worry, sweetheart. You work so much. You never talk about dating. And we just want you to be happy. Happy. The word felt like an accusation. I am happy. Are you? Dad asked, and there was something in his tone, a challenge disguised as concern. Before I could answer, Maddie lifted her champagne glass. The crystal caught the candlelight, making the bubbles sparkle like tiny explosions. Let's toast to Emma, she said, her smile dangerous. To my big sister who has everything figured out. I felt the shift before she spoke. The way the air changes before a storm. Tell us, Em, where's your husband? Maddie's head tilted, her voice honey-sweet. Where are your kids? She paused, letting the questions hang. Oh, right. Her smile sharpened. You don't have any. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Mom laughed, a high, crystalline sound that she probably thought would soften the blow. Maddie, don't tease your sister. But she was laughing. Actually laughing. Dad chuckled too, shaking his head like this was all in good fun. Now, girls. I sat frozen, my champagne glass halfway to my lips. The room had gone strange, the candles too bright, the food smell suddenly nauseating, the sound of their laughter echoing in my skull like a taunt. 7 years, $84,000. Every skipped vacation, every declined invitation, every sorry I can't afford it, while they lived their lives on my dime. And this was what they thought of me. Not the daughter who'd kept them afloat, not the sister who'd sacrificed her own stability for theirs. The woman who'd failed at the only thing that apparently mattered, finding a man and producing children. Maddie was still talking, her voice cutting through my shock. I mean, you're doing fine, right, that tech job of yours. She waved her hand dismissively. What is it you do again? Something with screen surveys. She knew exactly what I did. I'd explained it a dozen times. But understanding would require actually listening, and why would Maddie listen when she could diminish user experience research? I said quietly. Right. I just think... She leaned back, swirling her champagne like she was in a wine commercial. I think you'd be happier if you had a life outside spreadsheets and computer screens. You know, real connections, real experiences, a real future. Her words landed like punches, each one carefully placed, each one designed to find the soft spots I tried to pretend didn't exist. Mom reached over and patted my hand. We just want the best for you, sweetheart. And sometimes that means hearing hard truths. Hard truths, from the woman whose medication I paid for, delivered by the sister whose rent I covered, endorsed by the father whose mortgage I'd been handling since I was 25. Something inside me cracked. Not broke, not yet, but cracked. A fault line opening up in the foundation I'd built my entire adult life upon. I set down my champagne glass very carefully. My hands were steady. My voice when it came was calm. Hard truths. I looked at Maddie. Okay, let's talk about hard truths. She blinked, surprised. This wasn't the script. Emma didn't push back. Emma absorbed and accepted and paid for everything without complaint. Where's your money, Maddie? Her smile faltered. What your money? You know that thing people use to pay rent, to buy groceries, to fund their lifestyle? I kept my voice level conversational. Where's yours? I don't... Oh, right. I let the pause stretch just like she had. I've been supporting you for 7 years. The silence was different now. Heavy. Suffocating. Mom's hand froze on her water glass. Dad's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Maddie's face drained of color, her Instagram-perfect composure cracking. Emma, Mom started. No. I stood up my chair, scraping against the floor. You want to talk about hard truths? Here's one I've spent $84,000 keeping this family together. Mortgage, medical bills. Maddie's rent, her car, her business expenses. All of it. We didn't ask you to keep track, Dad said, his voice hardening. You didn't have to. I'm good with numbers. It's what I do remember on those screens with those spreadsheets. I looked at Maddie. The spreadsheets that paid for that dress you're wearing. That's not fair, Maddie started. Fair. The word came out sharp. You want to talk to me about fair? You mock me for not having a husband and kids while living off me like I'm your second parent. That's fair. Watch your tone, Dad said, rising from his chair. The professor, the patriarch, the man who'd taught me about fiscal responsibility while letting me fund his life for 7 years. No, my voice was quiet but firm. I'm done watching my tone. I'm done being the responsible one while you all take and take and take. Mom's eyes were filling with tears, the weapon she'd wielded my entire life. We're your family, Emma. Family helps each other. Help, I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. This isn't help. Help is temporary. Help is mutual. This is me being your safety net while you criticize me for not having the life you think I should want. I grabbed my purse, my hands shaking now, the adrenaline finally hitting. Emma, sit down right now, Dad demanded. I'm done sitting down. I looked at each of them, these people I'd loved and sacrificed for, and slowly disappeared myself for. I'm done with all of this. You're being dramatic, Maddie said, but her voice was uncertain. I'm being honest. For the first time in 7 years, I'm being completely honest. I walked toward the door, my vision blurring at the edges. Don't call me about money. Don't text me about bills. Figure it out yourselves. Emma? Mom's voice cracked. You can't just... I turned back one last time. They were frozen at the table, this tableau of the family I'd built with my own financial bones. Watch me. I don't remember the drive home. One moment I was standing in that doorway, my mother's voice calling after me. The next I was pulling into my apartment parking lot, my hands cramped from gripping the steering wheel. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and stood in the dark, breathing hard. My phone was already buzzing, text after text, lighting up the screen. Mom, Emma, please call me. We need to talk about this. Mom, you're upset and I understand, but this isn't the way, Dad. Your behavior tonight was unacceptable. We raised you better than this. Maddie. Wow, okay, so you're just going to abandon your family. Real mature. I turned the phone face down and walked to my desk. The stack of envelopes sat there where it had lived for months. Bills, notices, receipts I'd been too afraid to organize. Too afraid to really look at what they meant. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank account. The champagne I'd barely touched was making my stomach turn, or maybe it was the number staring back at me, $1,847.23. Less than $2,000 to my name at 32 years old. I should have had a savings account, an emergency fund, a retirement account that was more than the minimum company match. I should have had something to show for 7 years of work besides an apartment I could barely afford, and a family who saw me as a resource. My hands were steady now as I navigated to my automatic transfers. Transfer to Patricia Richardson, $2,500 monthly status active. Next payment May 1st. The cursor hovered over the cancel button. 7 years of conditioning screamed at me not to do it. Good daughters don't abandon their families. Responsible people honor their commitments. If you stop now, they'll lose everything. But a smaller voice one I'd been ignoring for so long whispered, "And what have you lost?" I clicked cancel transfer. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment?" I thought about that champagne toast, about Maddie's cruel smile, about my mother's pitying looks, and my father's entitled expectations. I clicked yes. Transfer canceled. 2 words. That's all it took. 2 words to cut a cord I'd been tangled in since I was 25 years old. I did it again. The transfer to Maddie's rent. Canceled. And again. The automatic payment for my dad's business expenses. Canceled. One by one I severed the connections. Each click felt like pulling off a bandage, painful, but revealing clean skin underneath. When I was done, I sat back and stared at the screen. My available balance was still $1,847.23. But next month it wouldn't disappear into the void. Next month it would stay mine. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed watching the shadows from the streetlights play across my ceiling, my phone buzzing every few minutes with increasingly frantic messages. By morning there were 17 texts and 4 voicemails. I listened to them while making coffee, my hands trembling slightly. Mom's voice shaking. "Sweetheart, the mortgage payment didn't go through. There must be some mistake with the bank. Can you call them?" "Please." Dad's voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Emma, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but this isn't funny. Call me back. Now." Maddie's voice moving from anger to pleading. "Em, seriously, you're really doing this. My rent is due in 3 days. I don't have it. You know I don't have it. Please don't do this." Another from Mom. "I'm trying to give you space, but Emma, we can't afford this right now. Your father and I were barely getting by. Please call me back." They cycled through the stages like clockwork. Confusion, anger, bargaining, but never, not once, accountability. Not one of them said, "We were wrong to treat you that way." Not one of them said, "We're sorry." They only said, "How could you do this to us?" I saved every message. Some instinct I couldn't name told me I might need them. By Wednesday, the calls were coming every few hours. By Friday, my voicemail was full. I went to work, sat through meetings about user interface optimization and customer journey mapping, and came home to the ongoing emergency of people learning to pay their own bills. On Saturday morning, I received the text I'd been waiting for. "Dad, Sunday dinner, 5 p.m. We need to talk. This is non-negotiable." I stared at the message for a long time. The old Emma would have showed up, apologized, probably written a check to make things right. The old Emma would have absorbed their anger and guilt and emerged with a payment plan that left her financially devastated, but emotionally acceptable. But something had shifted that Sunday night. Some fundamental understanding about who I was and what I deserved. I typed back, "Fine." Sunday arrived gray and cold, the kind of Seattle weather that matched my mood perfectly. I drove to Tacoma with my stomach in knots, but my resolve solid. This time I wasn't bringing wine. I wasn't bringing anything except the truth. The house looked different in the weak afternoon light, smaller, shabbier, more obviously held together with duct tape and denial. I parked and sat in my car for a moment, gathering my courage. Then I saw it. On the dashboard where I'd left it after printing at work a folder. Thick, professional, containing 7 years of bank statements carefully highlighted and annotated. I grabbed it and walked to the door. Mom opened it before I could knock. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face drawn. She looked older than she had a week ago. "Emma?" Her voice was small. "Thank you for coming." I followed her inside. The house was quiet. No cooking smells, no candles, no pretense. Dad sat at the head of the dining room table like he was chairing a board meeting. Maddie leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, avoiding my eyes. "Sit down," Dad said. "Not a request." I sat, placing the folder on the table in front of me. "This behavior has to stop," Dad began. "I don't know what's gotten into you, but—" "I canceled the transfers," I said calmly. "We know that," he snapped. "What we don't know is why you think you can suddenly abandon your responsibilities to this family." "My responsibilities." I opened the folder. "Let's talk about responsibilities." I slid the first sheet across the table. Bank statement from March with every family-related expense highlighted in yellow. $2,500 for mortgage, $800 for Maddie's rent, $450 for Mom's medication, $1,200 for meal. "We know what we asked you for," Mom interrupted. "Asked." I looked at her. "Is that what you call it? Because it never felt like asking. It felt like assuming." I pulled out more pages. January, December, November, a year's worth of receipts. "This is inappropriate," Dad said. "You're keeping score like we're strangers, not family." "I'm keeping records. There's a difference." Maddie finally spoke up, her voice sharp. "So what, you want us to pay you back? Is that what this is about? You want interest?" "I want acknowledgement," I said quietly. "Just once I want you to see what this has cost me." I pulled out a final document, the one I'd created last night. A simple spreadsheet. 7 years, 12 months per year, every dollar accounted for. Total financial support provided $84,247. The number sat on the page between us like an accusation. Mom gasped. "That can't be right." "It's exact." I turned the page to show the itemized breakdown. "Want to check my math?" The silence was deafening. "We didn't ask for that much," Maddie said, but her voice was uncertain. "Yes, you did. You just did it $800 at a time. $500 for photos, $250 for gas, $40 here, $60 there. It adds up, Maddie. 7 years of small requests becomes $84,000. Dad's face had gone red. "This is blackmail. This is honesty. You're trying to make us feel guilty." "I'm trying to make you see me." My voice cracked, surprising us both. "For 7 years I've been your solution, your backup plan, your emergency fund. But I'm not any of those things. I'm your daughter, and I'm drowning." Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Don't." My throat felt tight. "Don't touch me and tell me you love me while my bank account is empty and you're wearing a necklace I paid for." Her hand dropped. "So what now?" Dad asked coldly. "You cut us off completely, leave us to lose everything." "You taught me about consequences, Dad. Remember, actions have consequences. Fiscal responsibility. Living within your means. Weren't those your favorite lectures? This is different. Why? Because you're on the receiving end." The conversation devolved from there. Accusations flew. Mom cried. Maddie stormed out, then stormed back in. Dad threatened to cut me out of the will as if there was anything to inherit but debt. Through it all, I sat quietly, letting them rage against the person I'd finally become. When the shouting died down to bitter silence, I stood up. "I'm not your enemy," I said, "but I can't be your bank anymore. Figure it out. Sell the house. Get real jobs. Learn to budget. Do what everyone else does." "Emma," Mom's voice broke. "I love you," I said, and meant it even though it hurt. "But I love myself too. And it's time I started acting like it." I left the folder on the table, evidence of 7 years they could no longer deny. As I walked to my car, I heard Mom calling after me, pleading. I heard Dad's angry footsteps on the porch. I heard Maddie's voice, smaller now, saying, "Wait," but I didn't turn around. I drove back to Seattle with my hands steady on the wheel, tears streaming down my face, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt like I could finally breathe. End of Part 1. Cliffhanger tease. I thought that folder, those numbers would be enough. I thought the truth would set me free. But 3 days later, I checked my credit report, and I discovered my family's betrayal went so much deeper than I'd ever imagined. Word count 4,000 words. Chen. The credit monitoring email arrived at 11:47 p.m. on Wednesday. I was already in bed, scrolling mindlessly through my phone to avoid the silence of my apartment. 3 days since the confrontation. 3 days of ignored calls, increasingly desperate texts, and a gnawing feeling in my stomach that wouldn't go away. Credit alert, new account activity detected on your credit report. My thumb hovered over the notification. I almost deleted it, probably just the canceled transfers showing up some administrative thing. But something made me click. The app loaded. I navigated to my credit report, that document I'd been too afraid to look at closely for years. My score sat at the top 620. I blinked. That couldn't be right. 6 months ago it had been 780. I remembered because I'd checked it when I was daydreaming about maybe possibly someday buying my own place. 780 was excellent. 620 was bad. I scrolled down to the details, my heart starting to pound. Accounts in your name, 1. Chase credit card. Balance $847. This was mine. 2. Car loan, Toyota Camry. Balance $12. $453. Mine. 3. Student loans. Balance $18,902. Unfortunately mine. 4. Home equity line of credit. Balance $35,000. I sat up straight in bed. My phone screen suddenly too bright. Home equity line of credit. I didn't own a home. I'd never applied for a HELOC. I didn't even know what the interest rates were because I'd never needed to know. I clicked on the account details, my hands shaking. Lender Pacific Northwest Credit Union account opened August 15, 2024. Original amount $35,000, current balance $34, 127 property address. Fork 782, Meridian Street, Tacoma, WA 98408, my childhood home. The room tilted. I read it again, certain I'd misunderstood. But the numbers stayed the same. $35,000, in my name, against a house I didn't own. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't applied for anything. I hadn't even been asked. My fingers were numb as I scrolled further down the report. Auto loan, Honda CR-V, balance $18,247, account opened January 3, 2024. I didn't own a Honda CR-V. I drove a 7-year-old Camry. But I knew who did own a CR-V. Maddie had posted about it on Instagram 6 months ago. New ride, new vibes, with a photo of her posing next to a silver Honda Sunset Filter Perfect. The phone slipped from my hands onto the comforter. $53,000 in debt. In my name, without my knowledge, without my consent. I grabbed my laptop, pulling up my credit report on the bigger screen, praying it was a mistake, a glitch, an identity theft from some stranger in another state who just happened to pick my information. But the property address on the HELOC confirmed what I already knew in my bones. This wasn't identity theft by a stranger. This was identity theft by my family. I called the credit union at 8:01 a.m. the moment they opened. Pacific Northwest Credit Union, this is Jennifer. How can I help you? I need to... My voice cracked. I tried again. I have a home equity line of credit with you that I didn't apply for. A pause. I see. Can I have your account number? I read it off the credit report, my hands still shaking from the sleepless night. Keyboard clicking. Okay, I have the account here. Emma Richardson, correct. Yes, but I didn't open this account. The application shows it was opened in August of last year. Are you saying this is fraudulent? I'm saying I never signed anything. More clicking. I'm showing we have a signed application on file. Would you like to come into a branch to review it? Can you email it to me? For security purposes, we need to verify your identity in person for fraud investigations. Can you come to our Tacoma branch? Tacoma. Of course it was Tacoma. I'll be there in an hour. The Pacific Northwest Credit Union sat in a strip mall off Highway 16 between a nail salon and a teriyaki place. I'd probably driven past it 100 times without noticing. Jennifer turned out to be a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a practiced sympathy that suggested she'd handled situations like this before. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this, she said, pulling up my file on her computer. Identity theft is incredibly stressful. Can I see the application? She printed it out and slid it across her desk. There it was. My name typed in neat capital letters, my social security number, my date of birth, my employment information at the tech company, and at the bottom a signature that was supposed to be mine. I pulled out my driver's license and laid it next to the application. That's not my signature. Jennifer leaned forward, comparing them. The signature on the application was close, same first initial, same general shape, but the loops were wrong, the slant off. It's similar, she said carefully. It's forged. I heard my voice getting louder and forced myself to stay calm. I never came to this branch. I never applied for this loan. Someone used my information without my permission. Do you know who might have access to your personal information? I laughed bitterly. My family. Jennifer's expression shifted a flicker of recognition of understanding. I see. That's more common than you'd think, unfortunately. The property this is secured against 4782 Meridian Street. That's my parents' house. Yes, the loan was approved based on the equity in that property. The applicant, or whoever filled out this application, listed themselves as co-owner. I'm not a co-owner. I've never been on the deed. More keyboard clicking. The title search from August shows… It shows you were added to the deed in July 22nd, to be precise. The room felt too hot. I didn't sign anything in July either. Miss Richardson, I think you need to file a police report. This is fraud. Potentially multiple counts forgery, identity theft, possibly more. If I do that, what happens to my parents? Jennifer's voice was gentle but firm. That's not really for me to say. But the alternative is that this debt remains legally yours. $35,000 plus interest. And if payments aren't made, it damages your credit further. It could follow you for years. I stared at the forged signature. I thought about my father's hand, how many times I'd seen him sign documents with that same confident flourish. How easy it would have been for him to practice my signature, to get close enough. Can I get copies of everything, the application, the signature pages, all of it? Absolutely. I'll also flag this account as disputed. But Emma, she looked at me with those kind, sad eyes. You need a lawyer, not just for this, but for everything that might be connected to it. I sat in my car in the credit union parking lot, a thick envelope of documents on my passenger seat, and Googled Family Financial Abuse Lawyer, Seattle. The first result was a firm in downtown Seattle, Mitchell & Associates Family Law. I called before I could talk myself out of it. Mitchell & Associates, how may I direct your call? I need a lawyer for identity theft by family members. Please hold. Elevator music, my heart pounding in my ears. This is Sarah Mitchell. The voice was warm but professional. Mid-40s, I guessed. Confident. Hi, I'm Emma Richardson. I just found out my parents took out a loan in my name without my permission. And I think there might be more. How much are we talking about? $35,000 on a home equity line. Maybe more. I'm still looking. A pause. Can you come to my office this afternoon? I have an opening at 3. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Emma, before you come, check your full credit report. All 3 bureaus. Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. And bring any documentation you have of payments you've made to your family. Bank statements, Venmo receipts, anything. Why? Because in my experience, when family members cross the line, once there's usually more they're hiding. Sarah Mitchell's office was in a modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. She was younger than I'd imagined, maybe 40, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a handshake that meant business. Tell me everything, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. So I did. I told her about the Sunday dinners, the 7 years of payments, the champagne toast, and Maddie's cruelty. About the credit report, the HELOC, the forged signature. Sarah took notes in a leather-bound notebook, her pen scratching across the page. She didn't interrupt, didn't judge, just listened. When I finished, she looked up. Did you check all 3 bureaus like I asked? I pulled out my laptop. I pulled Experian and Equifax this morning, and I turned the screen toward her. There's more. The list had grown. Experian, home equity line, $35,000. Honda CR-V auto loan, $18, $247. Best Buy credit card, $4, $892. Macy's credit card, $2, $156. Equifax. Everything from Experian Plus. Personal loan from Lending Club, $15,000. Pacific Power and Light Utility bill and collections, $847. Sarah's jaw tightened. Combined total of $76,142. I'd done the math 17 times, hoping I'd added wrong. In addition to the $84,000 you gave them directly. Yes. Sarah sat back in her chair. Emma, do you understand what this means? They haven't just been using you as a bank. They've been systematically destroying your financial future. Your credit score, your ability to get a mortgage, to rent a better apartment, even to get certain jobs, it's all compromised. I know. My voice was small. Do you want to press charges? The question hung in the air. Press charges meant police. It meant investigations. It meant potential jail time for my father, maybe my mother too. It meant blowing up what was left of my family. I don't know, I whispered. Sarah's voice softened. You don't have to decide right now, but we need to act quickly on the financial side. First, we dispute everything with the credit bureaus. We file fraud reports. We get your name cleared from these debts. And my parents, the banks will investigate. They'll see the forged signatures. They'll have to decide whether to pursue criminal charges. But Emma, you're the victim here, not them. They'll lose the house. They used you to steal that house's equity. They made that choice. I thought about my mother's tears, my father's pride, the way Maddie had looked at me like I was the villain for setting boundaries. I need time to think. I understand, but while you think, let me do some preliminary investigation. I have a private investigator I work with, very discreet. He can look into your father's financial situation, see if there's anything else we should know about. Why would we need that? Sarah's expression was sympathetic. In my experience, when someone commits fraud on this scale, there's usually a reason beyond just living beyond their means. Gambling debts, failed business ventures, affairs. Something that created a financial hole they tried to fill with your credit. You think there's more? I think you should know everything before you make any decisions. Can I have him start looking? I thought about the man who taught me about integrity while forging my signature, about the way he and my mother had exchanged glances when talking about money. Yes, I said finally. I want to know everything. The investigator's name was Marcus Chen, and he worked fast. 4 days later, I received an email with an encrypted attachment. Sarah called immediately after. Are you sitting down? She asked. I was in my apartment staring at my laptop screen. Should I be? Yes. I sat on my couch phone pressed to my ear. What did he find? Your father lost his job 5 years ago. Not retired, not consulting. Fired. Fired for what? Attempted embezzlement from the university's discretionary fund. It was handled quietly. They let him resign instead of prosecuting, but he's essentially blacklisted in academia. I felt the air leave my lungs. My father, who'd lectured me about ethics and responsibility, had tried to steal from his employer. There's more, Sarah continued. He has significant gambling debts. There's a pattern of visits to the Emerald Queen Casino credit card charges, ATM withdrawals. We estimate he's down at least $40,000 over the past 3 years. $40,000, I repeated numbly. The HELOC money, most of it went to paying down casino markers. Your mother knew. We found emails between them discussing how to handle the situation. The room was spinning. All those years of Sunday dinners, of being told the mortgage was tight, medical bills were high, life was expensive. And they'd been covering my father's gambling addiction. With my money, with my credit, with my future. Emma, are you still there? Does Maddie know? We don't think so. She seems to be a different kind of victim in this situation. Your parents enabled her dependence, but she appears genuinely unaware of the fraud. Small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. What do I do now? That depends on what you want. We can pursue criminal charges, the evidence is overwhelming. Or we can go the civil route, get your name cleared, force them to repay the debts, avoid jail time. I need to talk to them first. Emma, I would strongly advise, I need to hear it from them. I need to look my father in the eye and hear him admit what he did. Sarah sighed. If you're going to confront them, at least let me be there. Don't do this alone. Okay? And Emma, be prepared for them to deny it, to blame you, to make you the villain. Families don't like being held accountable. I know, but I didn't. Not really, because nothing could have prepared me for what happened when I finally confronted them with the truth. I wasn't expecting Maddie to show up at my apartment. It was Saturday morning, 6 days after I'd met with Sarah. I was drinking coffee in my pajamas, staring at Marcus's investigation report for the 100th time when the buzzer rang. Emma, it's me. Can I come up? Maddie's voice through the intercom sounded small, uncertain, nothing like the confident influencer who'd mocked me over champagne. I hesitated, finger on the button. Why, please, I need to talk to you. Against my better judgment, I buzzed her in. She appeared at my door 2 minutes later, and I barely recognized her. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweatshirt instead of her usual curated outfit. She looked young, scared. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. Maddie walked into my small living room and stood awkwardly by the couch like she didn't know what to do with her hands. "Coffee." I offered, more out of habit than hospitality. "No, thank you. She took a breath. "I know about the loan." My stomach dropped. "How? Mom told me. Last night. She was crying, saying you were going to send Dad to jail, that you'd hired a lawyer, that you were accusing them of fraud." Maddie's eyes filled with tears. Is it true? Did they really use your name without asking?" I set my coffee mug down carefully. "Yes." "The car too, my car." "Yes." She sank onto my couch, her face crumpling. "I didn't know. I swear to God, Emma, I didn't know. Dad said you'd co-signed. He said you'd agreed to help." "He lied." "I know that now." She wiped at her eyes with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. "Mom showed me the credit report. All of it. The cards, the loans, everything. She said they were going to tell you eventually that it was just temporary until Dad's consulting business took off." "His consulting business that doesn't exist?" Maddie looked up confused. "What? I hadn't meant to say it." But the words were out now, and I was so tired of protecting everyone from the truth. "He's not consulting. He was fired 5 years ago for trying to embezzle money from the university. He's been gambling it away at the casino." The color drained from Maddie's face. No, that's not. Dad wouldn't." "I have proof. Bank statements, casino receipts, emails between him and Mom discussing how to hide it." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "Mom knew." "She's known the whole time." Maddie stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "This is insane. This is completely insane. They've been lying about everything." "Yes. And I've been—" She turned back to me, her expression crumbling. "I've been so awful to you. That dinner, the things I said about you not having a husband or kids—" "Don't." I cut her off. "I don't want to do this right now. But I need you to understand, I thought—" Her voice broke. "I thought I was the favorite. I thought they loved me more because I was special, creative, worth investing in. But I wasn't the favorite. I was just another tool they used. I studied my sister. I'd spent so many years resenting her, envying the easy affection our parents showed her. But looking at her now, 28 years old and utterly unprepared for real life, I saw what Sarah had said. Maddie was a victim too, just a different kind. They made you dependent on purpose," I said quietly, "so you'd never question them. And they made you responsible on purpose, so you'd never stop paying." Maddie laughed bitterly. "We're both puppets. They just pulled different strings." We sat in silence for a moment, two sisters who'd been played against each other our entire lives. "What happens now?" Maddie asked finally. "I don't know. Sarah, my lawyer, says I can press charges or try to settle it civilly. Either way, they have to repay the money and my name gets cleared." "They don't have the money. Then they sell the house." Maddie flinched but nodded. "That's fair. That's more than fair, actually." "You think so?" "Emma, they stole from you. They committed fraud. They destroyed your credit. If anyone else had done this, you'd have them arrested without a second thought." She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "The fact that you're even hesitating because they're family shows you're a better person than they deserve." "I don't feel like a better person. I feel like an idiot for not seeing it sooner." "You loved them. We both did." "That's not being an idiot. That's just—" She trailed off. "That's just being a daughter." I felt something crack in my chest. "Are you okay?" "Financially, I mean." "No." Maddie laughed wetly. "My rent is due next week and I have $300 to my name. But that's my problem to solve, not yours." "Maddie." "No, I mean it. I'm 28 years old. It's time I figure out how to be an actual adult instead of playing one on Instagram." She stood up. "I'm going to get a real job. Something with a salary and health insurance. Something boring and reliable." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. Because I've been watching you be strong and independent and capable while I posted aesthetic photos and called it a career. I've been jealous of you for so long, and I didn't even realize what you were sacrificing to make my easy life possible." She walked to the door, then turned back. "I'm sorry. For everything. For the dinner, for the cruelty, for not seeing what was happening. And I understand if you never want to talk to me again." "Maddie, wait." She paused, hand on the doorknob. Do you want to actually be sisters? Real sisters, not whatever we've been? Her eyes welled up again. Yes, God, yes. Then we have to be honest with each other, and we have to stop letting them pit us against each other. Okay? She nodded. I can do that. I want to do that. After she left, I sat on my couch and cried. Not from sadness exactly, from exhaustion, from relief, from the strange, unfamiliar feeling of having someone on my side. My phone rang. Sarah. I'm scheduling the confrontation for Sunday, she said without preamble. Family dinner one last time, but this time we control the narrative. Sarah. Maddie called me 20 minutes ago. She wants to be there. She wants to support you. I pressed my hand to my mouth, overwhelmed. Emma, I need to prepare you. This is going to be ugly. Your parents will deny, deflect blame. They'll say you're tearing the family apart. They'll make you the villain. Can you handle that? I thought about 7 years of payments. About $84,000 I'd given willingly and $76,000 they'd stolen. About the champagne toast and the cruel laughter. Yes, I said. I can handle that. Good. Because on Monday we file papers either way, criminal or civil, depending on how they respond. This is their last chance to make this right. And if they don't, then we let the law make it right for them. Sunday approached like a storm on the horizon, inevitable, terrifying, necessary. I spent the week preparing. Sarah coached me on what to say, what not to say. Marcus gave me copies of everything, the bank statements showing casino withdrawals, the emails between my parents, the forged signatures side by side with my real one. The evidence was damning, undeniable, but evidence couldn't prepare me for seeing my father's face when I accused him of fraud. On Saturday night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the family I'd had and the family I was about to lose, because there was no coming back from this. No matter how the confrontation went, no matter what they said or didn't say, the family that existed before was gone. I was about to burn it down myself, and for the first time in my life, I was ready. End of Part 2, Cliffhanger Tease. Sunday, 5 p.m., the same dining room where this all started. But this time I wasn't coming alone, and this time I wasn't leaving without answers. The house looked the same as it always had, peeling paint, sagging porch, the same crack in the front walkway. But I felt different walking up those steps. Sarah pulled up behind me in her Mercedes. Maddie was already there, sitting on the porch steps, her hands clasped between her knees. You ready for this? Sarah asked, briefcase in hand. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Maddie stood up. They know something's wrong. Dad asked why I was here early. I told him we were all having a family meeting. How did he react? He's angry. Mom's been crying all morning. Sarah adjusted her glasses. Remember, stay calm. Stick to the facts. Don't let them manipulate you emotionally. We walked in together. The dining room table was set not for dinner, but for battle. Dad sat at the head, arms crossed. Mom perched on the edge of her chair, tissues clutched in her hand. The atmosphere was thick with tension. What's this about Emma? Dad's voice was cold. Why do you need to bring a lawyer to Sunday dinner? This is Sarah Mitchell. She's representing me in a fraud case. Mom gasped. Fraud, Emma? How can you say such a thing? Sarah set her briefcase on the table and pulled out the folder. Mr. and Mrs. Richardson, I'm going to make this very simple. We have evidence of identity theft, forgery, and fraud. Multiple accounts opened in your daughter's name without her knowledge or consent. She spread the documents across the table. The credit reports, the forged signatures, the casino statements. Dad's face went white, then red. This is ridiculous. Emma is on our accounts because she's family. She helps us. That's what families do. Being on an account and having your identity stolen are two different things, Sarah said calmly. Emma never signed these applications. You forged her signature. I did no such thing. Robert, Sarah's voice cut through his bluster. We have handwriting analysis. We have the original applications. We have your casino records showing where the HELOC money went. We have everything. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mom started to cry. Real tears this time, not the manipulative kind. We didn't know what else to do. Your father's debts, the casino, they were threatening us. We were going to lose everything. So you stole from me instead. My voice came out steadier than I felt. We were going to pay you back, Dad said, but his tone had lost its authority. It was temporary. $76,000 isn't temporary. It's systematic fraud. I pulled out my own documents, the 7 years of bank statements. And that's on top of the $84,000 I gave you willingly. $160,000 of my money, my future, my life. Maddie spoke up, her voice quiet but firm. I didn't know about the fraud, but Emma told me about Dad's gambling, about getting fired. You lied to all of us. Mom turned to her. Sweetheart, it's complicated. No, it's not. Maddie's hands were shaking, but she didn't back down. It's actually really simple. You used Emma as a bank and then committed crimes when that wasn't enough. And you let me think I was special when really you were just making me helpless so I wouldn't ask questions. Dad's facade was cracking. I made mistakes, but I'm your father. We're your family. You can't just destroy us. You destroyed yourselves, I said. I'm just holding up the mirror. Sarah opened her briefcase again. You have 2 options. Option 1, Emma presses criminal charges. With the evidence we have, you're both looking at felony fraud charges. Prison time. Your choice. Mom whimpered. Dad's hands clenched into fists. Option 2, settlement. You sell the house within 90 days. You pay Emma $50,000, a fraction of what you actually owe. You remove her from every account immediately. Robert enters a gambling addiction program with proof of attendance, and you never ever contact Emma about money again. We can't sell the house that fast, Mom said. This is our home. Then option 1 it is. Sarah started gathering her papers. Wait, Dad's voice cracked. For the first time in my life, I heard fear in it. Please, just wait. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw him seeing me not as a solution, not as a bank, but as the daughter he'd betrayed. I'm sorry, he said, and his voice broke. Emma, I'm so sorry. I told myself I was protecting the family, but I was protecting myself, my pride, my ego, and I sacrificed you to do it. Mom was sobbing now. We never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said quietly. Every Sunday dinner where you took my money and criticized my life. Every time you made me feel like I wasn't enough while living off what I gave you. You hurt me in ways that money can't measure. We'll take option 2, Dad said. We'll sell the house. We'll pay you back. Whatever you need. Sarah looked at me. This was my decision. I need one more thing, I said. I need you both to go to therapy, together and separately, to actually deal with why this happened, because I can't have a relationship with you if you don't change. We will, Mom said quickly. Anything. And Maddie needs 6 months of financial grace from you. No expectations, no guilt. She's getting a real job and learning to stand on her own. You're going to let her. Dad nodded, defeated. Okay. Sarah pulled out the settlement agreement. Sign here, both of you. They signed. No more arguments, no more deflections. Just 2 people finally facing the consequences of their choices. As we stood to leave, Dad called out, Emma, wait. He walked to his office and came back with a manila envelope. His hands shook as he gave it to me. What's this? Your grandmother's land deed, the property in Olympic Peninsula. She left it to you in her will 10 years ago. We never transferred it to you. We kept saying we would, but... He couldn't finish. I opened the envelope. A deed to 1 acre of waterfront property. The appraised value dated from last month, $85,000. I had it appraised last week, Dad said, when I knew this was all coming apart. It's yours. It always was. I'm just finally doing the right thing. Mom touched my arm. It won't erase what we did, but it's a start, a real start. The for sale sign came down on the Tacoma house in October. Mom and Dad moved to a small apartment in Lakewood. Dad attended GA meetings 3 times a week. Mom got a part-time job at a medical clinic. They paid me the first installment $5,000. It wasn't much against what they owed, but it was honest money. Earned money. Maddie got hired as a social media coordinator for a local nonprofit. Entry-level salary health insurance, a 401k she didn't understand yet, but was learning about. She moved into a studio apartment and texted me photos of her first grocery trip with her own money. Maddie, I bought generic cereal and felt so proud. Is this what being an adult feels like? Me, pretty much. Welcome to the club. We had coffee every other week. Real conversations, not performances. She told me about her job, her struggles with budgeting, her slow realization that Instagram wasn't real life. I told her about my promotion at work, the vacation I was planning to Iceland, the small freedoms that came with keeping my own money. We were learning to be sisters, the real kind. The Olympic Peninsula property sat on a bluff overlooking the Strait of Juan de Fuca. I drove out there on a Saturday in November, the first time I'd ever seen it. My grandmother's land. Given to me with love, held hostage by guilt, finally returned. I stood on the edge of the bluff, wind whipping my hair, watching the water change colors as the sun moved across the sky. The property was worth $85,000, enough to rebuild my savings, start fresh, maybe even make a down payment on a place of my own. But as I stood there, I thought about Maddie, about her fear when her first rent payment was due from her own account, about her pride when she made it. I pulled out my phone. Me, the land is worth $85K. When I sell it, 20% goes to you. $17K for your emergency fund. 3 dots appeared immediately. Maddie, Emma, no, that's yours. Grandma left it to you. Me, I'm not doing this out of obligation. I'm doing it because you're my sister and you're actually trying. This isn't a bailout. It's a boost. Use it to build something real. Maddie, I don't know what to say. Me, say you'll never let Mom and Dad's poison make us enemies again. Maddie, deal. And M, thank you. For everything. For being strong enough to save yourself. It saved me, too. I sat on the grass looking at the water and cried. Not from sadness, from release. Sunday dinner happened once a month now. At a neutral restaurant, always Dutch treat. The conversations were stilted, at first awkward. But slowly, painfully, we were learning a new dynamic. One where love wasn't measured in dollars. Dad talked about his GA meetings, the shame he was finally processing. Mom talked about her job, how strange it felt to earn her own paycheck again. They asked about my life and actually listened to the answers. It wasn't perfect. Some wounds don't fully heal, but it was honest, and honest was enough. My credit score hit 760 by December. The fraudulent accounts were cleared. My name was my own again. I sat in my apartment, the same small space, but it felt bigger now, and looked at my bank account. Savings, $24,847.23. Money I'd earned and kept. Money that would grow, not disappear. Money that represented something more important than the amount my right to say no. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago. The one who'd sat at that table listening to her sister mock her absorbing cruelty like it was love. I thought about the woman I was now. The one who'd drawn a line and held it even when it hurt. People talk about family like it's sacred. Like blood means you're obligated to accept anything. But I learned something harder, more necessary. Family isn't about who shares your DNA. It's about who respects your boundaries. Who sees you as whole, not convenient. Who loves you without extracting payment. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who need you and choose people who see you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop saving people who won't save themselves. And sometimes the only way to keep your family is to first save yourself. Epilogue. 1 year after that champagne toast, I threw a dinner party in my apartment. Maddie came bringing grocery store flowers and stories about her awful boss. Sarah came, now a friend beyond her lawyer role. 2 colleagues from work. My college roommate I'd reconnected with. We ate pasta I'd cooked myself. Drank wine I'd actually chosen, not grabbed in panic from the discount bin. Laughed about nothing important. And when Maddie raised her glass for a toast, I didn't flinch. To Emma, she said, smiling. Who taught me that being strong enough to say no is the same thing as being brave enough to say yes to yourself? I raised my glass. To second chances and first priorities. We drank, and the taste wasn't bitter. It was freedom.